21. The invincible Zoffy has fallen? Zoffy, Captain, what are you doing? Someone shouted. Belial's swinging his sword at your head. Don't just stand there. No, it's too late. Captain Zoffy, don't be stubborn now. On screen, Zoffy simply lifted a hand in a crisp salute and didn't dodge. Hearts in the audience thumped against ribs, mouths gaped. Don't put on a show and get yourself killed, everyone wanted to shout. In the space garrison, Zeta frowned. What is Captain Zoffy doing? Ace smacked him upside the head. You idiot! Shut up! This is Zoffy's beam move. Beam move? Back on the video, Zoffy pressed his palms together. His color timer flashed white, and then he spread his hands wide with theatrical calm. You're finished. Belial charging in, and Belial watching from the frozen video frame thought the same thing. How dare he face me so defenselessly? Belial raised his sword, the Belial Riser, also called Belial Twilight, a surge of joy mixed with fury giving his strike force. But his move was flawed. His chest gaped open. Just as he lunged, a searing electrical crack split the air. Zoffy thrust his hands toward Belial, and a blinding cascade of light roared out, the Z-Ray. Belial had misread the tactic. At such close range, he had no time to block properly. The electric beam lanced into him. There was a terrifying, hair-raising blast of electricity. Belial screamed as the beam smashed into his chest. He gritted his teeth, planted his sword before him, and managed to halt Zoffy's attack, but not without being sent sprawling across the battlefield. He staggered back, then swung his blade to break the follow-through of the Z-Ray. The footage cut off right there. A caption flashed across the frozen screen. Zoffy Easter Egg. Chapter 1. Zoffy, you've really become something. Playback ended. No, why did it stop now? I was just getting into it. Keep the music going. Keep dancing. Why is it over? I want to see what happens next. A chorus of frustrated cries erupted from viewers everywhere. Liu Bei's voice calmed them. For various reasons, this battle between Zoffy and Belial ends here. Hearing that, the audience bit back a dozen curses. But new questions flooded in. Where was this frozen planet? Why were Ultraman and the Absolution clan fighting here? What was the kingdom? Why had Zoffy and Belial's duel been interrupted? Eyes glued to the screen, people refused to blink for fear of missing anything. In the Little Gold Man universe, Belial stood rigid as stone. How can this be? He hissed. When did Zoffy get this strong? How could he suppress me? He remembered mocking Zoffy's star emblem back on Golgotha, and realized he'd been lucky then, having met the 6 brothers when they were drained. Normally, one Zoffy could press him. Add more, not to mention Super Taro, the fusion of those 6 brats. One cosmic miracle ray, and he'd be finished. A cold fear slid through him, quickly drowned by humiliation and rage. Zoffy, you deserve to die! Tregear watched Belial's impotent fury and chuckled to himself, but he was also puzzled. Both he and Taro had seemed to appear in that clip. A child who looked so much like Taro had shown up too, calling Taro father. Tartarus had said the boy's name was Taiga? Tregear's brow twitched. The gift he'd given Taro years ago popped into his mind, the Taiga Spark. They'd named it together in the future? He felt a strange, dislocated thrill. I actually did it in the future, he murmured. I fought Belial one-on-one and even got the upper hand. Back on the Land of Light, Zoffy watched the clip with swelling pride. The ruse to bait Belial had been perfect. Even enhanced by Tartarus, Belial had been outplayed. He'd been knocked down so many times, but now Zoffy could finally hold his head high. And this was the future. The knowledge that this footage would play across worlds made Zoffy giddy. If only the screen could let him talk back to Belial. I would say, he thought, Belial, I was impressive today. What are you going to do about it? The younger Ultras, whether they'd lived through Belial's invasions or not, felt vindicated. The veterans who had fought Belial before smelled justice. So this is the day you lose, they muttered. If you ever set foot on the Land of Light, Zoffy'll rip your helmet off and scatter it across the sky. In another universe, a solitary figure watched and smiled sadly. Geed thought father was like this when he was young, but he'd still done terrible things to his comrades. Now Geed chased the shards of his father's evil, trying to pay back those debts. He stared at the dark fragments in his palm, lost in thought. The Easter egg chapter ended, and celebration erupted in many worlds. Zoffy's performance inspired toasts and cheers, except, notably, in the world where Belial lay wounded. That world was subdued. At last, people agreed that Zophy's place as captain of the space garrison and elder of the Ultra Brothers was well earned. His stubborn, unbending spirit alone was something to admire. No wonder he was called the toughest Ultra Warrior. But the video had stopped. The crowd groaned until a giant caption slowly unfurled across the frozen screen. Zophy Easter Egg, Chapter 2, coming soon. Oh, the viewers exploded. There's an Easter egg. Captain Zophy, yay, yay! Zophy, I love you. They waited, breath held. Then Lubei's narration cut through the anticipation like a knife. The invincible Zophy has fallen. Zophy stared at the words as if the screen had betrayed him. What is this? So I get one impressive moment and then I go down. Ultra, what the hell? 22 Zophy's down, Zophy's down. The invincible Zophy has fallen. The announcement echoed through the viewing halls of countless worlds. Silence answered it at first. No one reacted. Zophy, the invincible Zophy had fallen? That couldn't be right. They had just seen a clip of Captain Zophy's impressive performance, and now he was supposedly down? Curiosity pushed everyone to the screen. The video began. A swirl of stars opened onto a cold blue world. Neptune. Ice and sleet stretched across a barren landscape. Bleak ambient music made it feel like a horror show. Then, with a flash of lightning, something terrible rose from the mist. The universe's tyrant had appeared. Tyrant, an abomination made from Seagrass's head, the Choju Baraba's arms, and the bulk of the space beast Bemstar, loomed into view. Spikes, claws, and jagged teeth covered him from head to tail. He roared and leapt into the sky, a living weapon bristling with malice. Just as everyone braced for an assault on Earth, a familiar figure leapt into frame and grabbed the charging monster. Captain Zophy. On the screen, Zophy had intercepted Tyrant over Neptune. Daigo, watching Antigua World, tensed instinctively. Even an Ultra's intuition knew this enemy was dangerous. The narrator explained, Tyrant was a composite monster, deadly from every angle. Zophy hauled the creature down and planted himself, backpedaling 2 cautious steps into a fighting stance. Tyrant swung Baraba's blade arms and pounced. The Ultra and monster collided in a brutal grapple. Zophy unleashed everything he had, punch after punch, thunderous strikes that rattled the frozen sky. But the blows glanced off like wind. A desperate Ultra chop landed on Tyrant's chest. It did nothing. With a contemptuous backhand, Tyrant sent Zophy sailing through the air. Zophy spun and hit the ice hard. Even as he staggered to his feet, Tyrant grabbed him by the shoulders and flung him again. The cold bit into Zophy's stamina. He tried to rise, tried to rally, but after being thrown repeatedly, he simply couldn't find his footing. Viewers stared. This was less than 10 seconds of combat. Zophy hadn't even seen his color timer begin to flash, and he was already down. Where was the unshakable captain who stood up to the king of Ultra? Where was the Zophy who fought Belial one-on-one in the snow? In the Little Gold Man universe, White Belial, who'd been brooding not long before, snorted and laughed. You call yourself impressive? He jeered. Across other worlds, the chatter turned mocking. Some insisted it was a ruse. Zophy must be playing weak to lure Tyrant into a trap. Others simply couldn't accept it. Zophy had the star emblem on his chest. He was already security force captain at this point. He shouldn't be this fragile. Kiana's eyes widened in disbelief. Bronya pored over the footage, baffled. May frowned, considering. Maybe invincible was just a boast, she thought. Or maybe Zophy had an angle, some hidden motive. She watched intently. On screen, Zophy pushed himself up with great effort and raised a desperate hand, the gesture for his signature Ultra attack. Just then, Tyrant slammed a boot down on Zophy's right hand, crushing his attempt to fire the move. Zophy slumped, his last reserve of strength snuffed. Tyrant roared, took to the air, and set course for Earth. Zophy tried to crawl after him, writhing across the ice, but he collapsed before he could move an inch. The narrator intoned, "The invincible Zophy has fallen." His Ultra signature was blocked by Tyrant, and no one in space knew of the disaster. It was over. Viewers assumed the compilation had finished. They buzzed and argued about Zophy's performance. How could he be called invincible if he went down so quickly? Zophy in the space garrison breathed out, relieved that at least the clip had ended. He hadn't even finished exhaling when the narrator's voice came again. The invincible Zophy has fallen again. Zophy froze. Across countless channels, viewers gasped and squealed with renewed excitement. 23. The invincible Zoffy has fallen again. I, Zoffy, am begging you, stop publicly executing me. Only then did Zoffy realize his psychological fortitude might not be as ironclad as he'd thought. Babar, you darn it, any Ultra would be rattled being toyed with like this. He had been the protagonist of 4 consecutive videos. Was that reasonable? Zoffy still couldn't understand why he had knelt so quickly when he fought Tyrant back then. He told himself over and over it was because of the cold influence and because he wanted Taro, who was training on Earth, to get some practice. Yes, definitely not because he'd lost or wanted to slack off. But now, was the invincible Zoffy being humiliated again? This uploader was specifically targeting him, right? Zoffy clenched his fists. He'd heard from Leo that the clip came from a distant universe, a prank pulled by a human kid. After Leo had been featured, the kid could fuse and summon him. That meant he could do the same to Zoffy. You brat, if I catch you, I'll feed you an M87, he vowed. A coup! Who's talking about me? In the Annihilation dimension, Liu Bei, about to release a new video, sneezed and rubbed his nose, puzzled. Maybe the weather had turned cold and he'd caught a little chill. He reached for a cup of hot coffee on the table, took a satisfied sip, and felt warmth spread through him. The coffee from the Pacific Rim world really was good. Next up, release the Saflin Adults Easter egg video. Back on the Land of Light, Zoffy's anger eased a little as he mentally scolded Liu Bei. But the next moment, a scene flashed across the sky screen, a giant, bird-beaked monstrosity. Opposite it stood a red giant. Volcanic bird burden versus Zoffy. Ultraman. No. Zoffy's clenched hands relaxed at once. No, please don't show that part. If he had to pick the nightmare he least wanted to relive, it wouldn't be facing Belial, nor arguing with the King of the Ultras, nor the Tyrant fight. It was this battle with Burden, the most embarrassing defeat in Zoffy's career. But Liu Bei couldn't hear his pleas. At the space garrison, Zeta touched his head in disbelief. How could Captain Zoffy be defeated so easily? He was the space garrison captain, the eldest brother of the Ultra Brothers. Ace, standing beside him, replied evenly, "Don't overthink it. Brother Zoffy's strength is well known across the Land of Light. That Tyrant incident was just an accident. He wasn't truly invincible, but he was top tier." Zero nodded as well. He knew Uncle Zoffy's skill, techniques and beams alike. Then a narration cut in. The invincible Zoffy has fallen again. The 3 Ultras exchanged baffled looks. Fallen again? So this was a series. Young Zeta didn't yet understand. Once you went to some place like Earth, you had to be cautious. Maybe that place had some strange curse aimed at Ultra Warriors. Across other worlds, many viewers were perplexed after seeing the first video. Zoffy's performance had been unbelievable. Had he really been helpless against Tyrant? Or had he been holding back for some reason? Then another Easter egg video started. Viewers leaned in, eager to see whether Zoffy had truly underperformed or been falsely unbeatable. The footage played. On the screen, Burden and Zoffy faced each other. Burden had just taken a flying kick from Zoffy. His head spun and he wavered, planning to fly up. Zoffy seized the moment, charged, and slid forward to grab Burden's legs. Burden thrashed, trying to break free, but Zoffy's grip was ironclad. With a sudden heave, Zoffy pulled the bird down from the sky. Burden, enraged, leapt onto him, claws raking at Zoffy's face. Zoffy dodged and blocked, easily deflecting the attacks, then sidestepped and kicked Burden flying a long distance. Watching, the Ultras on the Land of Light nodded in appreciation. As expected of Captain Zoffy, fluid technique, years of combat experience. It could be a training lesson. But the obvious question remained. If Zoffy had the upper hand, how did he end up falling? The video continued. Burden screeched and charged again. Zoffy performed a dodging kick, sending Burden crashing into a nearby lake. Amid the spray, Zoffy took the opening, raised both hands, and gathered surging energy at his fingertips, the Z-ray that had once repelled Belial in the Snow Mountain decisive battle. A silver electric dragon roared out, striking Burden and filling him with smoke. Burden convulsed, fell to the ground in a dust cloud. "Who? As expected of Brother Zoffy," came the cheering. "Captain Zoffy fought well. Finish him. Quickly finish him off." Viewers were excited. The title made less sense than ever. Zoffy had the clear advantage. How could he possibly lose? Maybe Burden would get reinforcements? As they speculated, the footage moved on. Zoffy stepped forward, intending to close in and finish Burden. Instead, Burden suddenly lifted his head and unleashed a stream of raging flames. The fire instantly engulfed Zoffy. Many Ultra warriors watching thought that attack might trick ordinary Ultras, but not Captain Zoffy. He could counter with an Ultra barrier or dodge. There was no way he could lose. Impossible. Then the next frame dropped the room silent. With a sizzling crack, Zoffy's head caught fire. He was burning, literally aflame. Countless viewers stared, stunned. On the screen, Zoffy's expression blanked, his color drained as if the world around him had gone monochrome. He stood frozen, petrified, unable to move. Zoffy himself was speechless, completely immobilized. 24. 3 key words to remember. Humility. Zoffy's head is on fire. Oh my goodness. Look, Ultraman's head can actually catch fire. Haha, forgive me, but this is priceless. Zoffy, ha ha ha, I can't believe it. The sight of Zoffy with his head ablaze sent audiences from countless worlds into uproarious laughter. On the Land of Light Plaza, dozens of young Ultra warriors couldn't hide their grins. It was too funny, Captain Zoffy with such an absurd mishap. Meme references like Babar, son of a, the Ultra slap, or why did you break the Ultra key, Great King? All paled beside the image of Zoffy on fire. It was the sort of viral moment that comes once in 1,000 years. At the space garrison, Zeta was doubled over laughing, clutching his stomach. Taiga tried to stifle it, but someone beside him cracked up at Zeta's laughter, and that was enough for everyone to lose it. Ace moved to scold him, but seeing the clip, he only made it halfway through and then cracked up too. The Ultra brothers exploded into cheerful guffaws. Even father and mother of Ultra let a smile cross their faces. Taro laughed until he was breathless, leaning on Zoffy and patting his shoulder. Brother, so that's why you collapsed back then. This is what happened. Ha! Taro cried, which made it even worse. He knew full well he was the last person who should be laughing. Zoffy had gone to help him, but it was impossible not to. The idea of an Ultraman literally catching fire was different from the usual flashy attacks. This was absurd, humiliating, and somehow endearing. Ha ha, Brother Zoffy, you might get a new nickname. Captain Flamehead. Sounds powerful, Taro sang. Captain Flamehead fits right in with little Mebius's Brave of Flame. Others chimed in, and the room filled with merriment. Zoffy looked up, mortified. He wasn't afraid of Burden's fire. He'd faced flame attacks before, but he couldn't fathom how his head had spontaneously caught fire. Even a stalwart like him panicked at the spectacle. He forced a smile and let them enjoy the joke. Tiga Universe, Shinjo and Hori were snickering, still repeating Captain Flamehead, and the invincible Zoffy fell again. Rina and Captain Iruma whispered and grinned. Only Daigo wore a strained, worried smile as he watched. If Zoffy's head could catch fire, he thought, maybe Ultramen really could end up as internet jokes. He stared anxiously at the giant screen. The second Easter egg clip was ending, and the third compilation was coming up. He mentally went over every embarrassing thing Tiga might have done, praying he wouldn't end up the next viral punchline. Back in the footage, Zoffy is utterly unprepared. He flails, trying to shield himself from Burden's flames with one hand and pat out the fire on his head with the other. In his flustered state, he loses balance, stumbling like someone with a slipped disc. Burden pounces on the opportunity. A quick flick, and Zoffy is sent flying. He tumbles through the air and, splash, lands in the same lake Burden himself had been hurled into earlier. The tables have turned. Steam hissed up as the water doused the flames, and Zoffy floundered toward the shore. Just as he begins to pull himself out, Burden charges, its bird-like legs hammering the ground. Burden screams, its razor beak slams into Zoffy's left leg. Rip, the armor tears, and viewers across realities flinched, clutching their own legs as if feeling phantom pain. Zoffy howls, but Burden doesn't stop. The beak strikes again, this time into Zoffy's back, piercing dangerously close to his spine. Strength drained from him in an instant. After a few pitiful thrashes, his bulk collapses, kicking up dust. Burden shrieks triumphantly and stamps on him several times, then, satisfied, flaps away. The clip cuts. Across the Land of Light, no one panicked. Zoffy was sitting right there in the garrison, so they knew he wasn't actually dead. These days, an Ultraman who hadn't self-destructed or been disintegrated twice would barely be allowed to call himself one without shame. Falling, being blasted, or otherwise ending up in ridiculous viral footage had become part of the job. But viewers from other universes had no way of knowing. For a moment, they feared the worst. A narration saved the day. The invincible Zophy fell again. Fortunately, Mother of Ultra arrived on Earth later and revived Zophy. Relief swept through the audience. Laughter was one thing, but nobody wanted anything permanent to happen to Zophy. The clip titled Zophy Easter Egg Part 2, The Invincible Zophy Falls, ended there. Everyone sighed. What a hilarious break. But no one could look away. The preview for Compilation Video 3 began rolling. Compilation Video 3 coming soon. Keyword, humility. Humility? The crowd's curiosity spiked. Meanwhile, worlds kept doing their own things. In Honkai, Bronya had been so amused by the footage that she modeled a Zophy figurine, complete with interchangeable accessories. Flamehead Zophy, Z-Ray pose, M87 Ray pose. She'd even started a tiny burden model. These will sell like crazy, Kiana declared, clutching the flaming head figurine with sparkling eyes. And somewhere else, the clip's producers teased the next release. Audiences everywhere leaned forward, waiting to see which Ultraman would be the next to add to the blooper reel, and whether humility would be the theme. It turned out Zophy's flaming head had been an accident. The suit had caught fire during the scene, yet the image stuck, and Zophy had become a legend of laughter across the multiverse. 25. The humble candidate is humility? For a moment, the Ultramen of the Land of Light were all puzzled. The idea even sounded like a little self-praise. It wasn't an exaggeration to say the Ultra Warriors' morals were among the highest in the universe, living saints in many people's eyes. Humility was a basic trait for them all. Choosing a representative for that quality was no easy task. Looking at the pattern of previous inventory videos, this humility hint could go two ways. Either it was a sarcastic jab at somebody famously arrogant, or it was highlighting someone whose steady character taught a lesson in humility, like Zophy's steadfastness. After thinking it over, the younger Ultramen leaned toward the first interpretation. It would probably be a poke at someone arrogant. They simply couldn't imagine anyone famed for humility among their ranks. Arrogance, however, now that they could picture. One such figure stood right there in the space garrison, repeating his catchphrase and staring at the screen. Zero rubbed his rabbit ears, suddenly uneasy. Were they talking about him? No, that couldn't be right. Everyone who knew him understood why he could come off as cocky, his family background, the number of times he'd saved the day, and his combat reputation. How many Ultramen could really challenge him? Very few. He was the face of the Ultra Warriors' fighting strength. Besides, it wasn't true arrogance so much as a free-spirited youthfulness, a streak of impetuosity, a normal trait for someone his age. Hikari, who do you think this subject will be? Zero asked the scientist beside him. Hikari, freshly arrived from the Space Science Technology Bureau, shrugged. I can't say for certain, but if you insist I choose someone who fits that brief, you're a likely candidate. Me, Zero blinked. Why? Hikari didn't answer with words. He mimicked Zero's trademark pose, chin up, thumb to his nose. The message was unmistakable. You're still 20,000 years too early. Across the multiverse, others were registering the clue and drawing their own conclusions. On Gaia World, Gamu raised an eyebrow when the next keyword appeared. Scientist. He'd thought Ultramen were all warriors like himself or a ghoul. He hadn't considered there were scientists among them. At the same time, a small, sinking thought flickered through his mind. Could it be about me? Then he thought of Fujimiya, who often seemed arrogant when he became Agul. The idea fit awkwardly. In Tiga's world, Daigo paused mid-thought. He, too, expected the inventory to target someone arrogant. But on reflection, that didn't match the general demeanor of an Ultra. Even after a monster battle, he wouldn't boast. He had to hide his identity, after all. Kengo stopped punching a sandbag at the training ground. A humble scientist? His first thought was Akito Hijiri, genius researcher of TPU and a close friend, but Akito wasn't an Ultraman. Kengo then realized something else. He himself was a scientist, a botanist. Were they going to dig up some embarrassing past of his? He grimaced and tried to think of any shameful incidents, but found none he would remember daily. He decided to keep training. If he had to face a fight, he'd try to fly off in better shape than last time. Back on the Land of Light, the older Ultraman compared notes. If it's a scientist, probably from the Blue Tribe, Taro said, nodding as he rested his hands. Tregier's face flickered through his mind. That makes sense, Mebius agreed. Most researchers are Blue Tribe. Among Ultramen, three main lineages were common: Silver, Red, and Blue. Silver Tribe Ultramen were fewer but powerful both in status and in beam techniques. Father of Ultra, Mother of Ultra, Ultraman, the First, Ultraman Ace, Mebius, and others were orthodox Silver Tribe heroes. Red Tribe members specialized in physical combat. They were numerous and formed the pillars of the Land of Light, heroes like Seven and Taro. For the record, Father of Ultra carries a recessive red gene, which is why Taro is Red Tribe, no strange family connections implied. The Blue Tribe was different. Not as strong in sheer combat as the others, Blue Tribe Ultramen were often brilliant in intellect and scientific expertise. Hikari, the renegade Tregier, and Sora were notable examples. Hikari himself served as director of the Space Science Technology Bureau and was known for his modest, gentle nature. No wonder then that when the screen in the sky changed, a familiar voice echoed through the square. "I am just a scientist. I don't have strength like theirs," the voice said. Hikari, watching quietly, looked up. The voice sounded like his own. A blue figure appeared on the giant screen. "It's Hikari!" Mebius shouted with joy. Young Ultramen around them cheered too. "Officer Hikari of the Space Science Technology Bureau." I thought it would be Zero. His title. Does he have some hidden power? How interesting. At last they're spotlighting one of our Blue Tribe researchers. Most had expected an inventory of one of the great Silver or Red heroes. Hikari had the least public presence among the Ultra Brothers, so this revelation surprised them. In the Little Goldman universe, Tregear watched the image and chuckled. "Long time no see, Officer Hikari." Belial, standing nearby, snorted. A Blue Tribe researcher, what power could he possibly have? The sight of Hikari stirred a particular irritation in him. It wasn't a personal grudge on the level of hate, but Belial had met Hikari back when he hadn't yet left the Land of Light. Hikari had been a modest member of the Science Technology Bureau then, and he had formed a deep friendship with Zoffy. Belial hated Zoffy, and by association he disliked anyone close to him. Hikari's connection grated on him. He expected a prank, some embarrassing past footage in the vein of the Zoffy videos. Those always made him cackle. At that moment, the screen shifted again. The on-screen text faded into the background, and the video began to play. "I'm just a scientist. I don't have that kind of power." The screen began to play. The audience watched in rapt silence. In a warm, dreamlike space, countless bubbles drifted through the air, and within each bubble scenes of Ultra Warriors unfolded. The original, Seven, Ace, and among them a floating blue figure appeared. It was Hikari. An ethereal, soft female voice spoke. "In the Land of Light we heard the legend of the Space Garrison, the guardians of universal peace." "Space? Garrison?" Hikari asked, puzzled. The voice replied, "You are a member of it, aren't you?" "No," Hikari shook his head. "I'm just a scientist. I don't have the strength they do." Mebius, usually gentle, suddenly burst out laughing, drawing surprised looks from the others in the security force. "What's wrong, Mebius?" someone asked. Hikari glanced at him. "Nothing. I just remembered something funny." "Ha!" Mebius laughed and patted Hikari on the shoulder. Father of Ultra came over with an indulgent smile and also patted Hikari. "Don't worry," he said. "It's good for everyone to broaden their horizons." Hikari frowned. Broaden their horizons? Was Father of Ultra talking about some new technique he didn't know? He looked blankly at the two of them while they silently pointed back at the screen, urging everyone to keep watching. Hikari felt oddly singled out, and he couldn't work out why. Even Belial and Tregear looked puzzled. Hikari was a Blue Tribe Ultra, a scientist and planet observer, not a frontline fighter. Compared with the Red and Silver tribes shown in the bubbles, like the original and Ace, he simply didn't have their raw power. He wasn't being modest, it was the truth. Tregear in particular felt a prick of sympathy. Also of the Blue Tribe, he had long resented his lineage, feeling inferior beside Taro's brilliance. That resentment had driven him to defect, to embrace darker powers. His root complaint had been the same. The Blue Tribe's light had seemed too weak. Liu Bei's narration then explained the differences among the Red, Silver, and Blue tribes, and that Hikari was a Blue Tribe warrior whose work was scientific observation rather than battlefield glory. The audience understood. When Hikari said, "I'm just a scientist, I don't have their strength," he was simply stating a fact. It hardly sounded humble. Back on the screen, the scene shifted to planet Aris, a land of crystal radiance. White crystals floated and coalesced into an illusory female figure. Hikari asked, "Who are you?" "We are the Arusians," she answered, "beings who have lived on this planet since ancient times. Over the course of evolution, we've merged with many of our kin and become this land itself." Hikari stared. "So this whole magnificent land is part of us," the voice confirmed. "We bind ourselves to it." "Why contact me? What if I'm an invader?" Hikari asked warily. The voice sounded gentle. "Because your heart is clear, like ours." "A clear heart?" Hikari repeated, bewildered. The exchange that had drawn smiles and sighs across the viewing worlds followed. When Hikari said, "I'm just a scientist," the Erusian voice showed no disappointment. "Whether you are a warrior or a scientist, a clear heart does not change. Live your life fully. That's enough." Later, beneath a star-strewn sky, her tone softened into something like affection. "Are you homesick?" "No," Hikari replied, shaking his head. "I'm thinking how many stars there are in the universe, but none as beautiful as Aris. I will live on this planet with you." The scene was almost a confession. Viewers in every world smiled indulgently. The sweetness of it softened the room. Hikari himself exhaled, almost inaudibly, "Thank you, but that's impossible." The audience went silent. That rejection was unexpectedly blunt. The Erusian voice sounded startled. "Why?" "If the sword's prophecy is true, peaceful life will be short-lived," Hikari said. The sword? The sword is the host body of planet Aris. Its prophecy speaks of a great shadow that will threaten this world's peace." Crystals swirled into a red, foreboding vision, a terrifying, higher-dimensional predator, Boga, tearing through the land with massive claws, laying waste to everything. The Erusian voice sighed. "One day Aris will be destroyed." A chill passed through the viewers. Was this the beginning of the main story? Everyone leaned in. Hikari straightened, fists clenched. "If only I had power." "Having the will is enough," the voice soothed. "Leave before the disaster strikes." Hikari was taken aback. "But don't worry," she interrupted. "There is one hope left." "Hope? A hero will descend from the sky, clad in armor of light, and merge with the land of Aris. That is in the sword's prophecy. We must wait for that hero. If he comes—" Hikari cut her off, voice steady with resolve. "Then I want to become that hero." He flew up toward the heavens, to an unknown destination, and the scene froze on that soaring romantic image. Viewers everywhere buzzed with excitement. Did Hikari become the one who saved planet Aris? Is this where he began to gain power? You Hikari. Officer Hikari used to be a planet observer. I only heard that recently. Among the Ultra brothers, Hikari's the most low-key. I thought it was Idis Gege. He saved planet Aris later, didn't he? I think so. Hikari's the head of the Technology Development Bureau and also an Ultra brother. But didn't he say he didn't have that kind of power? He's a Blue Tribe Ultra. A dozen young Ultra warriors argued and speculated with bright, excited voices. It didn't concern Hikari. Standing with the security force, he kept his head lowered, radiating an unmistakable melancholy. Planet Aris, that wound never healed. If only he'd returned sooner, if only he'd stopped Boga, maybe everything would have turned out differently. Maybe he wouldn't have become what he did. "Hikari." Mebius put a hand on his friend's shoulder, feeling his sorrow. Father of Ultra gave a soft sigh. Both understood the tragedy of Aris. Hikari forced a small smile. "I'm fine," he said, deflecting. "I just find it strange, this video. Why is it trying to prove whether I'm humble or not?" Father of Ultra and Mebius exchanged a look. It was better to wait for the footage than to explain. Mebius said, "Watch the rest. Once you see their reactions, you'll understand." Hikari nodded and listened. In a parallel corner of the multiverse, Trigger's face curled with sarcasm. He thought he already knew what Hikari would become. Warriors of Light always seemed so earnest and blind to their own flaws. This Trigger, from another universe, didn't know the exact history of planet Aris, though. He wanted to know how the former officer Hikari had fallen. The video continued. Young Hikari was shown traveling the galaxy. He landed on a bleak planet, dusty plains like a goby, jagged hills, desolation stretching to the horizon. After wandering for some time, he found a cloaked figure, seated cross-legged with their face hidden, back turned to him. Hikari approached. The figure had already sensed him, and before he reached them, asked, "Who are you?" "I'm looking for someone," Hikari answered. "Someone said to be able to make the impossible possible. I came to obtain that power." "I know where he is," the figure said slowly. "But do you really want to see him?" Hikari tensed. "I don't have time. Please, tell me." The cloaked person didn't speak. Instead, they raised an arm and pointed to the sky. "Look." Hikari glanced up. Thunder rolled, dark clouds gathered, and in moments, a torrential storm blanketed the entire planet. The stranger rose and said, "Your heart is like this storm." "No," Hikari said quickly. "I will not be consumed by power. I swear I will use any power to protect the weak." "If you can stop this storm," the stranger's voice dropped to a whisper, as if the heavens themselves were listening. Everyone watching in the land of light and beyond leaned forward. Could an Ultraman change the weather over an entire planet? In the Tiga universe, Shinjo and Hori's eyes widened. Daigo, who had always pictured scientists as desk-bound logisticians rather than frontline warriors, found his assumptions overturned. He had only ever seen Tiga's fighting power. Could an Ultra really do something like this? Back in the footage, Hikari was not wavering. He crossed his arms, gathered energy, and suddenly thrust both hands to the sky. A thick, dazzling blue wave of light burst forth. "Ha!" he shouted, and the beam punched through the oppressive clouds. In an instant, a hole ripped open in the darkness. Shafts of sunlight fell through. The tear widened and widened until the gray mass was split apart, sunlight pouring down across the planet. Within seconds, the storm had vanished, and the world was bathed in brilliant light. Even the cloaked stranger lowered their head at the sight. The gallery of viewers across universes was stunned. He had changed the weather of an entire planet, by himself, in mere seconds. The contradiction was striking. This was the same Hikari who had always protested, "I'm just a scientist. I don't have the Ultra Brothers' power." You sly Hikari, they thought, not telling us the whole truth. Back in the land of light, the square fell silent. The young Ultras were utterly shaken, their worldviews rearranged. Hikari had always been gentle and discreet. They had never seen him fight. He was a civil official, head of technology development, a protected figure among their people. Such a person shouldn't, by all logic, possess such staggering power. And yet he had. If he could do that when he was young, how strong must he be now? They felt it in their bones, hair on end, breaths held. A group of Blue Tribe newcomers clenched their fists, eyes glittering with a new pride. Hikari had brought honor to the Blue Tribe. Across to another realm, in the Little Gold Man universe, Absolution Titan nodded to himself. Hikari's ability impressed him. If Hikari cooperated with the kingdom, perhaps they could find a way to stabilize the runaway energy tower. Still, thinking of Little Gold Man, who favored war, Titan quickly dismissed the thought. Belial was equally stunned. What the? This was a Blue Tribe warrior? When he'd first heard the name, Hikari had been just a junior engineer in the Technology Development Bureau. For a Blue Tribe Ultra to change a planet's weather alone, no external aids, no tricks, in seconds, that was more remarkable than many feats by Silver or Red Tribe members. Could that be right? Triggear noticed Belial's expression, and a sneer crossed his face. You always look down on the Blue Tribe, he thought, but the smugness in his mind belied a grudging recognition as the footage kept playing. 28. Hunter Knight's sword, Hikari's regret. What are they talking about? Officer Hikari stared, bewildered, at the young people clustered on the plaza, their voices buzzing with excitement. He could make out snatches of praise. Officer Hikari is actually so strong. Humility, my foot, and he really brings honor to our Blue Tribe. Strange. Hikari's unusually clear mind found all of it baffling. He had only changed a planet's weather and passed a test. How was that worthy of so much fuss? Everyone in the space garrison could do the same. He glanced at the others from the security force and realized they had been quiet since a moment ago, watching a screen with odd expressions. "What's wrong with all of you?" he asked. Mebius chuckled. "You still don't get it." Hikari typed a slow question mark. Mebius waved his hand and smiled. "Keep watching the footage. Their expressions will be even more amusing in a bit." The scene shifted. Hikari had dispersed the dark clouds and stood satisfied. He'd passed the test. He turned to look for the mysterious figure who had spoken to him earlier, but the figure was gone. Then a voice sounded behind him. Well done. He turned and saw an old man in a cape stride toward him, radiating authority. I go by many names on many planets, the old man said, shaking his cape with a smile. On Earth, they call me the King of Ultra. The audience gasped. It's him, the king who shattered the barrier. He's back. Earth? Hikari had never heard that name. The King of Ultra explained, there are beings on a world called Earth. You will meet them one day. Across countless worlds, viewers stirred at the word humans and Earth. Then the king raised his hand and fired a small ball of light that attached itself to Hikari's right wrist. Hikari felt its potent aura and cried out in surprise. What is this? This will be your power, the king said with a smile. On the land of light, many Ultra warriors recognized the device at once, Night Aura. The King of Ultra had given Hikari this equipment not only to aid him, but to warn him. The cleaner the water, the easier it is to become murky. Never forget a heart as clear as the sky. Go. Hikari bowed gratefully. Thank you, King of Ultra. He transformed into a beam of light and shot off into the cosmos. The scene switched again. Planet Aris, once a shining jewel of crystal, was marred by a dark, burning wound at its center, like a spreading tumor. A bad feeling tightened in Hikari's chest, and he accelerated toward Aris. As he feared, the planet's surface lay barren. The glittering crystals were gone. A hulking monster rampaged across the land, tearing apart what remained. Those creatures were Aris beings. Viewers winced in sorrow and anger. Could Hikari stop this fiend? He slammed down to the ground, fury searing through him at the sight of his ravaged home. The beast, Boga, spotted him and fired a beam. Hikari dodged, unhurt. At that instant, the remaining Aris beings who had been hiding saw Boga strike the one they loved and flung themselves into a crystal storm, surging out to attack. Electricity cracked across Boga's form, and it howled in pain. But then Boga's wings unfurled like a vast net, and it swallowed more than half of the Aris beings at once. The net snapped open, and only 1 in 10 of those crystals remained. The rest disintegrated with agonized screams. Even the remote audience felt a helpless, crushing sadness. Hikari staggered under the blow. He had barely a moment to react before the horror unfolded. Ah! He screamed, raw and unbearable. A night beam blade extended from his wrist armor, flames of light roaring along the blade. He wanted to tear Boga apart. You cannot use power like this. King of Ultra's voice sounded in his mind. Why? Should I just stand by? Hikari rasped, sobs deepening his voice. I can't let this go. Your heart is consumed by anger and a lust for revenge. That is not the right way to use your power. Far away, the king's tone was stern as he clenched his fist, but Hikari had lost all reason. Yah! He roared and slashed wildly with his light blade, ignoring the warning. Thrown off balance by rage, his attacks were chaotic and ineffective. He did no real damage and was pushed back. Boga kept firing light projectiles. Hikari clumsily parried them, once deflecting a shot that struck the beast. Perhaps thinking it was pointless to bother with a lunatic, Boga's form shimmered and it took 2 steps back, then vanished from planet Aris. It had escaped. Don't leave! Hikari lunged, but pain pinned him to the ground. He could only watch his enemy go. On the desolate surface of Aris, Hikari collapsed and pounded the earth with his fists. I couldn't protect anything, he wailed. The scene tore at the viewers, but they still didn't understand why all this was supposed to demonstrate Hikari's humility. He had failed to defeat Boga and couldn't save Aris. Aside from changing the weather, he was, as he'd said, merely a scientist. Their thoughts reeled. Then, in the footage, a whisper threaded into Hikari's ear. I heard it then, the hateful voices of the dead, the wails of vengeful spirits. Pale green apparitions of vengeance drilled into him, one after another. They were the restless souls of the Aris beings. Ah! Hikari howled in pain, and in an instant he was transformed, armored from head to toe, his aura sharpened into something fierce and resolute. This was no longer a man weighed down by sorrow. Now is not the time for lamentation. Don this armor and fulfill your revenge, the voices seemed to say. He had become the Hunter Knight's sword. The Ultras of the Land of Light gasped in astonishment. 29. The power of scientists. I never thought Officer Hikari would turn out like this. Hatred really does make you lose your head. Even with Ultra King's power, he couldn't beat Boga. Maybe what Hikari said is true. He's just a scientist. No matter how angry he gets, he can't overcome certain limits. There must be an innate gap among Ultramen. Those were the thoughts running through the crowd. Even after Hikari fell and became Hunter Knight Swordsman, he still seemed bound by the perceived limits of his power. Perhaps his weather-changing feats were just a quirk. Against a monster like Boga, Hikari might be helpless. Daigo, watching in the Tiga universe, wouldn't accept that. "No, it can't end like this," Daigo muttered, eyes fixed on Hunter Knight Swordsman. "Ultraman, don't give up. The video isn't over. Hikari still has a chance." Captain Aruma, hearing him, came over. Daigo waved him off. "Nothing," he said quickly, but his voice held conviction. Aruma studied him for a moment. Daigo's thoughts echoed those of viewers in other worlds. Hikari had always presented himself as humble. Was it all an act? The compilation had left them curious. Did Hikari finally get his revenge? The scene shifted to Earth. Relying on scant clues, Hikari had tracked Boga across many worlds and learned its name. Boga was a dog-like eater of life, and its next pasture would be Earth. Two monsters reared up, teeth bared, claws flashing. The ground trembled, but their target was each other, not humanity. Gudon and Twin Tail? Jack recognized the pair at a glance. Natural enemies, he'd fought them once beneath a dying sun. Nearby, a woman in white watched with a hungry leer, licking her lips. Purple light flared in her eyes as she transformed. Boga had come to Earth. It tore through Gudon and Twin Tail, swallowing them whole. After devouring them, Boga evolved into a larger, more dangerous form, Bogamons. Even Mikla, summoned by the Guise members, fell to it. Bogamons charged the Guise. Then a red figure descended from the sky, Mebius. He engaged the monster, blades flashing, trading blows and damage with Bogamons. The new generation Ultras in the Land of Light Plaza cheered. Mebius was like an older brother to them. He and Hikari were known friends. Mebius had the upper hand, until he didn't. He froze mid-attack. Boga carried immense energy and was a mobile powder keg. If it exploded, everything nearby would be annihilated. The audience feared for Mebius and the humans. Guy's support arrived and shifted the balance. Mebius seized Bogamons with both hands, intending to carry it off-planet. Then, sensing something, Mebius scanned around. A blue beam cut through the air from behind him, aimed squarely at Bogamons. Mebius threw the beast away to prevent the blast from hitting it and triggering an explosion. As the camera widened, viewers finally saw the attacker, Hunter Knight Swordsman Hikari. "Hikari!" Cries of alarm filled the screen. "What is he doing? He could blow everyone up." "He's driven by hatred." Hikari's presence radiated lethal resolve. Mebius planted himself between Hikari and the humans. "Stop! If Boga explodes, countless people on this planet will die." "So what?" Hikari answered coldly. "If we don't finish this thing now, there will be even more victims. It will keep eating lives." Hikari drew his Nightbeam sword. It was clear the two Ultras were at an impasse. Hikari wanted to end Boga on the spot. Mebius wanted to remove the threat from Earth and fight it safely in space. There was no compromise left, only battle. "You can't be his match, Instructor Mebius," the youngsters at the Land of Light shouted. In other universes, viewers reached the same conclusion. Hikari, a Blue Tribe scientist, couldn't possibly best Mebius of the Silver Tribe, who'd trained in the space garrison and mastered Ultra Brothers' techniques. They watched breathless as light blades rang out. The two swordsmen exchanged move after move, neither yielding. Then, astonishingly, Hikari gained momentum. His upward slash shattered Mebius's light blade. Mebius lost his parry and was sent tumbling by a crushing kick. Mebius hit the ground hard. The audience's jaws dropped. Hikari, who'd always played down his abilities as just a scientist, had outmatched one of the Ultra Brothers. Swordsmanship, close combat, technique, the gap suddenly looked undeniable. Even a relatively fresh space garrison warrior like Mebius should have been superior to a Blue Tribe scientist. Yet Hikari fought like a master who'd hidden his true strength all along. Gasps and exclamations filled the viewing halls. "He was acting humble," some cried. Hikari was playing the underdog. Mebius, sprawling on the ground, didn't sulk over being bested. Instead, a wry pride touched his features. He knew Hikari better than most. Rising slowly, he thought with unmistakable warmth, "Are you kidding? Hikari's swordsmanship is far beyond what anyone gave him credit for." 30. Is Hikari strong because of his knightly aura? Wow, Officer Hikari is ridiculous. Yeah, Instructor Mebius doesn't stand a chance against him. Mebius lost to Hikari. Who'd have thought? So humble, too ultra humble. I'm inspired. In the Land of Light Plaza, a crowd of new generation ultras watched the footage with rising excitement. Our M78 is something else. The Blue Tribe's own scientist is this powerful, and he's not arrogant about it either. He doesn't go around bragging, "You're still 20,000 years behind me." Even the old-timers clicked their tongues in surprise. The Ultra Brothers, including the original 7, who hadn't known Hikari well, were full of praise. What are you all doing? I'm just stating facts. As a scientist, I don't actually have extraordinary strength, Hikari said, puzzled. When the Ultras heard him, they didn't argue. They only nodded as if to say, I get it. Right, you're not strong. We understand. But the display had convinced viewers across worlds that Hikari was genuinely modest. The clip kept playing, and everyone leaned in. Would Hikari finally kill Boga and avenge Arus? In the footage, Hikari had beaten Mebius and was about to strike Boga when he suddenly stopped, as if he'd heard something, and sheathed his light sword. Aihara Ryu, ready in the fighter, also reacted, surprised. Captain Serizawa. Zzz. A golden arc of electricity struck Hikari in the back. Boga had recovered and ambushed him, sending him sprawling. Mebius leapt up with a shout, intercepted Boga, and a fierce exchange followed. Boom, boom. Several heavy impacts rattled through the scene. Boga took a flurry of Mebius's kicks and retreated, vanishing, only to reappear in the next clip. This time, the scene cut to Guy's base. Boga was coming in hard. The Guy's weapons pounded its body with little effect. Mebius! Two figures erupted from a beam of light, red and blue, Mebius and Hikari. The pair moved in perfect sync, hammering at Boga with relentless pressure. When one tired, the other took over, never giving the monster a chance to breathe. Boga lashed out with its electric attack, knocking Hikari down again. In the next instant, Mebius vaulted into the air, spinning, Taro's swallow kick, and slammed Boga face first into the ground. The two circled and struck in unending motion, a living Mobius strip of attack. Red and blue blurred around the foe, leaving sparks and gouges across its hide. Boga staggered, unable to withstand the assault. As it struggled to rise, the two ultras took up their finishing stances. Mebium Beam, Night Ray. Two converging beams of red and blue energy tore into Boga. White smoke billowed. The creature convulsed. The viewers cheered. Hikari so humble, little Mebius so cool. But not everyone was convinced. Across other worlds, a few voices grew skeptical. Hikari's strong because the King of Ultra gave him a night aura. Exactly, he doesn't seem to get hurt no matter what. If it weren't for Mebius, maybe Hikari couldn't have finished Boga. It's possible. All that power came from outside. Armors, auras, other Ultramen. Maybe Hikari was just lucky. Some viewers argued that Hikari hadn't truly proven his strength at all, that his feats depended on the night aura from the King and Mebius's help. Whether he was genuinely humble, they said, would need stronger proof. Coincidentally, the footage wasn't over. Back in the clip, Boga had collapsed, but its internal energy readings spiked violently, a detonation imminent. Aihara Ryu, piloting the jet, fired the capture torch to pry open a gap in the magnetic confinement array Guys had set up to control the blast radius. Mebius was preparing to move out when Hikari suddenly surged forward. He drew his night beam blade and drove it straight into Boga's chest. Go! My life is at its end. If I can witness Boga's explosion, my revenge will be complete, Hikari said. What nonsense, Mebius shouted, panic in his voice. From outside, Aihara Ryu shouted too, baffled. What are you doing? Get back. The energy inside Boga flared red and white. It detonated. In the heart-shaking explosion, Mebius didn't run. At the last moment, he hurled himself through the blast and dragged Hikari out of the collapsing field. Hikari tried to lift a hand, as if to say something. Mebius gripped his trembling fingers, but they went limp. Hikari lay still. Had Hikari died? The Ultras in the Land of Light didn't panic. Hikari was standing there right where they'd seen him in countless images, perfectly fine. But viewers in many worlds covered their mouths. Not the lead of the story, surely? Relief came with Liu Bei's narration over the footage. After this battle, at the urging of Mother of Ultra, Hikari removed his revenge armor and, before returning to the Land of Light, gifted his night aura to Ultraman Mebius. Good. Hikari didn't die. There was a collective exhale. Still, doubts lingered. Had Hikari's prowess been manufactured by his armor, the night aura, and Mebius's help? Some called his title into question. As if in answer to those voices, the clip continued. Text flashed on screen. Hikari, I'm just a scientist. Is it too much to lift a burden with one hand? Having shed his armor and lost his knight aura, Hikari now faced a powerful foe alone. Lift a burden with one hand? The ultras were stunned. The audience leaned forward, breath held. With his gear gone and no teammates at his side, Hikari stood alone, and the next scene promised to reveal just how much of his strength was truly his. 31. Bemstar, I heard you like to eat light. What is a Bemstar? A monster? It sounds like it isn't weak. Otherwise, why would it be in the inventory video? Voices from different worlds buzzed through the audience. None of them were sure how valuable Bemstar was, but the words single-handedly made them instinctively feel this was no lightweight. They didn't know how that feat stacked up against other Ultramen, so they settled back with their popcorn and watched. The Ultramen from the Land of Light, however, understood immediately. The name Bemstar made Jack's expression tighten. Bemstar, the space monster that once defeated him on Earth. He remembered that in the end it took Seven, sending the Ultra Bracelet for him to finally beat the creature. The first generation's Ultraman's face shifted as well. It wasn't that a close combat specialist like him feared Bemstar by default. It was Bemstar's peculiar ability to devour beams that brought one name to mind, Zeton. A monster that could nullify most ray attacks and one that had also beaten them. Thinking of the theme of the video, the First and Jack exchanged looks. Hikari had even faced such an enemy? In the square, many of the new generation Ultramen started murmuring among themselves. Space Monster Bemstar. Among the monsters, it's considered a pretty heavy hitter. Even Senior Jack lost to it. It eats rays and reflects attacks. It's a real headache for beam-based fighters. Officer Hikari lifted Bemstar with one hand. Is he being serious? At Space Garrison, Zeta, still a green cadet, hadn't yet grasped Bemstar's reputation. He asked Ace beside him, Brother Ace, is Bemstar that powerful? Why are they reacting so strongly? Ace chose his words carefully. Bemstar isn't just powerful, it's a special kind of threat, one of those rare monsters that neutralizes beam skills, somewhat like Zeton. If you fight purely with close combat, you can beat it. Leo did something like that. But without beam support, it's a lot more difficult. To beat it, you either have to rely on pure physical might or have beam output that overwhelms its absorption. It can absorb rays, Zeta thought. I wonder how Officer Hikari dealt with something that dangerous. On screen, Hikari meets Bemstar in the depths of space. He reaches for his Knight Aura and finds his hand empty, then remembers he'd already handed the gear off to Mebius. Even so, I'll defeat you, he says. The two launch at each other and clash in a furious aerial battle. After several rounds of pursuit and feinting, Hikari lands a flying kick that sends Bemstar tumbling into a nearby planet. The fight continues on the ground, kicking up clouds of dust. Bemstar hurls a massive boulder that whistles toward Hikari. Hikari dodges gracefully, then avoids a flurry of claws. The horn-like protrusions on Bemstar's head begin to glow and spurt out strips of bright yellow light, shots that, while missing Hikari, disrupt his rhythm. Enraged, Bemstar charges. Hikari meets its momentum, his elbows hammering into the back of its skull, thud after muffled thud that shakes the dust around them, but the monster barely slows. Its force slams Hikari to the ground. He scrambles up and kicks Bemstar away with an upward thrust, but fighting without the Knight Aura is taking its toll. Consecutive light blasts smash into him. He doubles over with a wound at his side and panting. Bemstar advances to peck him twice more. At that instant, a red orb of light smashes down, blinding Bemstar. Zophi emerges from the light. The audience cheers at the appearance of the veteran, but then their excitement turns to puzzlement. With Zophi here, wouldn't Hikari have help? 2 Ultramen against 1 should make short work of Bemstar, diminishing the feat. Those who thought that underestimated Hikari. Zophi and Hikari confer for a beat, mere seconds in real time, but something in Hikari's expression changes. He seems to have understood. Bemstar screams and surges forward. The 2 Ultramen brace and rain powerful blows onto its body together. Bemstar struggles, but can't withstand the 2-on-1 assault. Just as it tries to flap away, Hikari unleashes a sharp cry and rockets to Bemstar's side, tackling it to the ground with lightning speed. So fast, Zophi doesn't have time to respond. Bemstar panics, flapping wildly to shed the clinging Ultraman, but Hikari won't let go. The two of them skid across the landscape until the creature, unable to control its flight path, slams into a towering mountain, sending rocks and dust cascading. Hikari straddles Bemstar's back like a righteous avenger, raining down punch after punch. Bemstar rolls, stands, and gets knocked down again. Each strike lands like a muffled thunderclap. It looks for all the world like a drunken brawl. Hikari, the relentless fighter, fists falling with brutal precision. The audience watches, hearts pounding. Hikari isn't just skilled with a blade, his brawling is ferocious. Then the playback shows something that makes jaws drop. After a final crushing blow, Hikari slams Bemstar to the ground and, with a single effortless motion, hefts the struggling monster up with one hand. He lifts it over his head as if it were a sack of stones. Shock ripples through the crowd. With strength like this, are you really a Blue Tribe scientist? The spectacle intensifies. Hikari drives Bemstar into a jagged mountain peak so hard the summit crumbles and the earth fractures. He bellows, and the space around him vibrates as immense energy condenses in his palms. Ha! Heat overload ray. A brilliant blue, high-temperature beam tears from his hands at Bemstar. Dazed from the brutal beating, Bemstar only has reflex to angle its abdominal absorption port toward the attack, its built-in countermeasure against Ultraman beams. For a moment, the monster feels confident. It can't defeat him in close combat, but maybe it can simply eat the ray. Instead, its belly swells, convulses, and the ray's impact shoves it backward as if invisible pistons are driving into its torso. Hikari's beam keeps pounding without let-up. Bemstar screams as muscles bulge and fail. Finally, with eyes wide in panic, the creature collapses and dies where it falls. Then, boom. Aftermath explosions rip the air. Flames and shockwaves fling debris skyward. Bemstar is torn apart, blown to pieces. A deep crater marks the spot where it died. The audience is stunned into silence, then bursts into uproar. The playback ends, leaving rows upon rows of Ultramen staring at the screen, stunned by what they've just witnessed. Hikari had not only defeated Bemstar, he'd done it with brutal close work and a beam so fierce it overpowered the monster's own absorption. The feat redefined the limits they had assigned him. I'm really just a scientist. We agreed not to use beam finishers on Burden. Why did Officer Hikari just blow it up? Is this what a scientist can do, so strong? He didn't even flicker his light. I'm convinced, truly convinced. Officer Hikari really is humble, nothing like that rabbit-headed guy. Officer Hikari, the pride of our Blue Tribe. In the Land of Light Plaza, the new generation Ultras were in an uproar. They felt like their monster combat credentials had been stolen overnight. The old guard at the space garrison had always said you don't use beam finishers on Burden. And yet Hikari not only used a beam finisher, he detonated the whole thing. How was that possible? From that day on, the Ultra Warriors of the Land of Light learned another lesson: Ultra humility. Even Ultraman and Jack stood there with their heads tilted, utterly dumbfounded. The two brothers looked comically confused. What the heck? Why did they suddenly feel like their accomplishments had been devalued? One of them had a brutal time fighting Burden. The other once tried to lift guts and ended up pinned underneath. Compared to Hikari, it seemed obvious. On the surface, it was a 2-on-1 with Zafy and Hikari, but in reality, Zafy had been there to guide Hikari, help him fight right and overcome himself. The feat had been Hikari's. Hikari himself, though, saw nothing wrong. I was just stating the facts, he would say. I really wasn't being humble. The Ultra Brothers are the true warriors. I, a plain scientist, don't have that kind of power. Tiga World. That's incredible. You call that a scientist? Hori stammered, grabbing Shinjo's shoulders and shaking him. I don't know. This Hikari really was being humble after all. Shinjo stood speechless. Even Daigo beside him stared wide-eyed. Was the Land of Light secretly teeming with prodigies? As Tiga's human host, Daigo knew monsters. He knew how hard it was to physically lift a giant foe. He'd had to switch to power type just to manage it. Yet Hikari had lifted a monster in one motion, with one hand, hoisted it above his head, and hurled it into a mountain peak. That took not just strength, but incredible balance. Their scientist was a bit unscientific. Tiga Universe. Kengo Manaka watched Akido, who was lost in thought, and felt something stir. So a scientist-type Ultraman could be this strong? The Ultraman Kengo knew Zeta and Libut were fighters first. If someone like Akito could transform into an Ultraman, no way! Akito cut him off. You're a scientist too, right? Botanist Kengo Manaka. Akito admitted he'd once been envious of Kengo's Ultraman form. He wanted that power to defeat monsters and protect Yuna. But he'd given up trying after a few days. Kengo worked non-stop. He was always up against two monsters at once, always in tag team relays. The Dark Giants loved to throw out one monster to distract, then hit him hard the moment Kengo finished. Kengo came back black and blue constantly. 8 times out of 10, he was disintegrated in battle. He was a workaholic who never complained, always smiling through hellish 48-hour stretches. If it had been Akito in Kengo's shoes, his resolve might have cracked. Akito, for all his tsundere pride, still admired Hikari, yet he secretly thought he and Kengo were tougher. In scientific skill, he considered himself unmatched. In raw combat, botanist Kengo felt stronger than Hikari. As the viewers' debates reached a peak, Hikari's review video drew to a close. On screen, he and Zoffy stood over the smoldering remains of the defeated burden. "Hikari, I want to promote you to the space garrison," Zoffy said. "But," Hikari began, surprised. Zoffy nodded. "You still have things you need to do." He extended his right hand. "You are already an excellent Ultra Warrior." Hikari looked at the offered hand and shook it excitedly. "Thank you." "Then let's go back." The two Ultramen stood to leave. Suddenly a white arc cut across the sky. Another burden, heading earthward. "Is that headed for Earth?" Hikari asked, alarmed. "It's all right," Zoffy said, waving the worry away. "Earth has Mebius. But trusting your comrades is also one of the qualifications for the space garrison." As Zoffy finished, the screen froze. The original video title flashed. "Hikari, I'm just a scientist. I don't have their kind of power." It was the perfect ending. Huh? No Easter egg episode? Some viewers noticed. Why was there no postscript? It wasn't that Liu Bei didn't want to release one. He felt Hikari's short epilogue would be thin on its own and should be held for a later Ultraman story. Liu Bei thought for a moment, then sent a few lines out. Review Video 4, The Most Benevolent Ultra Warrior. No prize guessing game. Choose from the following candidates the one you think best represents benevolence. Ultraman, First Generation. Ultraman Leo, Cosmos, 7. Ultraman Ace, Mebius. Results revealed in 1 hour. Stay tuned. Benevolent? On planet Juran, Justice patted Cosmos on the shoulder. The benevolent Ultraman. Could it be you? I hope not, Cosmos replied, smiling calmly but inwardly worrying that his own complicated past might be dredged up. If critics brought up his history, he was afraid he might have to switch to future mode and physically reason with them. Across other worlds, the audience erupted into debate over the no-prize poll. Before a winner could be agreed upon, the timer on the screen changed. From 1 hour to playing soon, something was off. Liu Bei hadn't wanted to change plans, but he heard a commotion outside the streaming room. The camp is under attack. He shut down the system and walked out the door. 33. Leo, it's me again? While Liu Bei handled the small interlude, viewers from many worlds were busy with the no-prize guessing game. At first, some had ruled Leo out. After all, he'd already been the protagonist of the first review video, so it seemed unlikely he'd appear again so soon. And that first video had shown him fighting hand-to-hand, beating foes to death with punches and kicks, rather than ending fights with a single beam. How could that be called merciful? Speaking of mercy, that one actually fits the description pretty well. At the space garrison, Zero rubbed his chin and pictured one Ultra in his mind, Ultraman Cosmos. He'd met Cosmos twice and seen his methods. Most of Cosmos's beam attacks were used to soothe or heal monsters. Techniques like the full moon wave and the Cosmium ray were about reforming opponents, not incinerating them. Cosmos had never shown Zero any form-changing tricks. He came across as gentle and mild-mannered. An Ultra who refused to kill monsters unless absolutely necessary had to be the embodiment of mercy. Looking at the other choices, Ultraman, First Generation, Ultraman Ace, even some of the old guard, Zero thought those types would kill without a second thought. The conviction settled in. It must be Cosmos. He wasn't the only one to think so. Far-off worlds had Ultra Warriors who'd fought alongside Cosmos and reached the same conclusion. Jinga, Victory, and even a certain scruffy street-roaming Ultra from another universe. Mercy? What does that even mean? Is it an Ultraman with a particularly good temper who doesn't like to fight? No, no. This time I think it's actually the opposite. It's some extremely fierce guy. On Tiga's world, Shinjo and Hori argued heatedly. Reina chimed in. Not necessarily. Look at Hikari. Isn't he genuinely very gentle? That makes sense. Anyway, I still think they'll show a violent Ultraman this time. Nonsense. Daigo, who'd been quiet, suddenly stood up and shouted at Hori. Daigo, what's wrong? We were only kidding. Why are you reacting like that? Realizing he'd overreacted, Daigo cleared his throat. I mean, how could Ultramen be violent, except for people like Belial? Ultra warriors are all good people. That's true. Shinjo was left speechless. Daigo's outburst had made him seem overly sentimental, but who was he to judge the rest? Captain Iruma watched Daigo thoughtfully. Since the review videos started appearing, the kid had been behaving oddly. Was he hiding something? Mercy? Pathetic. In the Little Gold Man universe, White Belial's voice dripped with contempt. Mercy was the most useless quality in battle. Even before he left the Land of Light, Belial had been known for brutal killing blows. He showed no mercy, even when the enemy's offense didn't deserve a death sentence. Ken, before he became Father of Ultra, had lectured him repeatedly, but Belial never listened. Still, the word mercy summoned a face in his memory. The young mother of Ultra, Marie of the Silver Cross. Belial sneered. That woman actually chose Ken? How short-sighted. Damn Ken, stronger than me, more prestige than me, luckier with women than me. I'll make you pay. The seed of hatred in White Belial's heart had long ago taken root and grown into a towering tree. At the Land of Light Plaza, new generation Ultras debated excitedly and cast their votes. Instructor Leo. It has to be Instructor Leo. He airs enemies out with his bare hands. Are you serious? How is that merciful? What if they mean the opposite? Think about Leo and Taro's civilization. Oh, right. As the votes rolled in, the most popular picks from various worlds scrawled across the sky screen. I vote for Leo. Pacific Rim World officially supports Ultraman Leo. We look forward to your next visit to fight monsters. Leo, Leo. Leo's heart sank. Didn't these people have any sense? I've already been publicly humiliated in several worlds. Do you want to do it again? Just pick someone obviously merciful. Besides, my review video was just released. How could it be my turn again so soon? Please, not me. Other voices popped up. Instructor 7. I heard he trained capsule monsters and worked as a civil official. He must be merciful. Who's Cosmos' subordinate? Never heard of him. I vote for Ultraman, first generation. Instructor Mebius has the best temper. Everyone at the training ground likes him. Despite the jokers, most casual viewers guessed Leo. His fighting style had been on display and looked brutal enough. One punch, one kick, end of story. Cosmos, known to some as the Warrior of Compassion, was still unfamiliar to many in the Land of Light because he came from another universe, so he was lumped into the background. That made Cosmos quietly relieved. He'd always pursued peaceful coexistence and harmony with all life. If an incorrigible monster appeared, he'd reluctantly incinerate it, but he hoped his fame would come from his ideals, not from some exposed dark history. Ultraman Ace, watching the whole thing unfold, hadn't been mentioned much either. Most people only associated him with beam techniques, and he'd only popped up briefly in the videos about Taro and the Ultra Key. No one really knew his fighting habits, so he wasn't worried about being accused of either mercy or brutality. Then the text on the screen changed. Welcome to the Ultraman review video. According to the voting results, the outcome of this no-prize guessing game is Ultraman Leo. Not this again. Leo clenched his fists and glared at Liu Bei. You better be sensible. A second later, a small relief washed through him. Unfortunately, the guess is incorrect. Now for the correct answer. This review video, the most merciful Ultraman is the Ace of the Ultra Brothers, the Showa-era paragon, Ultraman Ace. Boom. It hit Ace like a bolt of lightning. He'd been enjoying Leo's embarrassment, but now his head buzzed. Inwardly, he cursed. Why me? 34. Ace. Super beasts have no sense of pain. Any living creature, when attacked, will feel pain, fear, or reveal a weakness. But a Choju, super beast, will not have such feelings. In other words, a Choju does not feel pain. The Ultramen of the Land of Light exchanged puzzled looks. Viewers from other worlds were even more bewildered. The result had just been announced, and before anyone could react, a narration started offering a clinical explanation. That alone was odd, but the real shock lay in who had said it. Everyone on the Land of Light recognized the voice. Ace. Instructor Ace? It's Instructor Ace, whispers rippled through the crowd below the stage. So Choju don't feel pain? Is that true? Someone asked. Fool, Instructor Ace said that himself during training. I remember that. I remember too. Ace, who'd looked a little rattled at first, calmed himself when he heard his name repeated. Standing beside him, Zeta asked curiously, Brother Ace, why are you so calm? They're going to review you. Ace only shook his head. He had already searched his memories and found nothing that matched any accusation of cruelty. He wanted to see what the review footage would show. The other Ultra Brothers stepped forward with reassurances. Ace, we know you. As if to say a clear conscience fears nothing. Under the expectant gaze of countless viewers, the video began. Ace's first decapitation. The title froze everyone. First, decapitation. Murmurs ran like a current through the crowd. Was it a typo? Ace felt a cold dread coil in his chest, but he straightened, keeping his composure. The screen showed a gigantic Choju with two great wings on its back and a savage maw trampling human cities. Ancient Choju Gamera King, the caption read, once destroyed Atlantis in the 13th century BC. Note, Choju are biological weapons created by Yapul and do not feel pain, from Ace. A red flash, and Ace made his entrance. Unlike the dramatic flying kick entrances some Ultramen favored, he was pushed over as he transformed and tumbled across the ground. As he recovered, Gamera King beat its great wings, whipping up a sandstorm that swallowed Ace. Blinded by dust, Ace could only shield his eyes and nose. Gamera King struck for his head. Against expectation, Ace countered instantly. He forced his way in, pinning Gamera King and wrapping his arms around the creature's neck. Many Ultramen watching nodded approvingly. Ace was one of the Ultra Brothers, seasoned and tactical. Though surprised during transformation, he had turned the tide within seconds. It was textbook. Taro, chief instructor, called down to the new generation below. Study Instructor Ace's combat technique carefully. Understood? Even as he shouted, Taro frowned. What did this straightforward combat sequence have to do with Ace's so-called benevolence? On screen, Ace locked Gamera King's neck with a look that said, You dare ambush me? He then delivered a powerful uppercut to the beast's chin and sent it flying. Ace pressed the attack, but the monster retaliated, tossing him to the ground. After rough grappling, they broke apart and circled. Gamera King flapped its wings, rose, and its razor-like feathers carved a gale that shredded buildings. It glided twice, ramming Ace into the ground. Two brutal strikes to the chest left Ace badly hurt. His color timer blinked red. Just as concern spiked among viewers, the scene shifted tonally. Ace staggered to his feet, wounds notwithstanding, his gaze fixed on Gamera King's wings. The beast sneered and spat a cloud of corrosive gas that could melt steel. Ace snarled, dodged the gas, and lunged. A flurry of punches and kicks thundered into the monster. He slammed it, then leaped, executing a difficult twist, but instead of a signature kick, he landed behind Gamera King, grabbed a wing, and with a tearing sound ripped it free. A collective gasp ran through the crowd. Ace leapt to the other side and tore off the remaining wing. Gamera King howled and bled, but Ace did not hesitate. He fired a metallium ray. The colored beam struck true, and the Choju was obliterated in an instant. The video froze on Ace's furious face. Viewers across the multiverse fell silent. The supposed review of benevolence had turned into an indictment. Ace had been merciless, directly targeting the beast's wings. On the Land of Light, however, reactions were more measured. The new generation Ultramen were surprised. The usually composed Instructor Ace had an unexpectedly ferocious side, but most tried to understand. I don't think it's outright cruelty, one commented. He targeted the weapons. If that Choju's strongest assets were its wings, disabling them first makes sense. But what about the claim that Choju don't feel pain? Listen to Gamera King's screams, another said. Maybe that was just a normal roar, someone else offered. Choju might be different from ordinary monsters. Before the youth could debate further, the next video rolled. This Choju was mechanical in appearance, bristling with sharp horns across its head and back, more insect than beast. Unicorn Choju Bakishim, the caption read, Purple-red missiles fired in rapid succession from two nostril-like ports. Ace dodged with practiced grace, unharmed. He then slammed a flying kick into Bakishim's missile launcher, sending it crashing. Many viewers began to detect a pattern. Whatever part the Choju used to attack, Ace targeted that part in return. Again and again, he went for the source of the threat. Ace pounced on Bakishim and straddled it, hammering the downed machine. Bakishim twisted, trying to present the spikes on its back as weapons, and when Ace collided with those spikes, he was thrown aside. The two grappled, exchanging blows, when Bakishim suddenly shot twin streams of flame from its fingertips. Gasps filled the audience, not for Ace's peril, but in admiration of that fiery spectacle. In the Land of Light, Zophy felt a chill. He turned and found all the Ultramen secretly staring at him. Damn it, he thought. I told them that time my head caught fire was an accident. An accident, understand? They're still staring. Do you want me to blast you with an M87 ray? 35. Ace the Decapitation Maniac. The crowd watched the footage with bated breath, expecting the same scene they'd seen with Zophy. Someone's head burst into flames, frantic fumbling to put it out, maybe even a death. Even Zophy himself muttered in exasperation, "Are we still on this? When will it end?" But what the audience imagined never happened. On screen, Ultraman Ace leaned back and barely avoided a gout of fire. Seeing that his opponent, Bakishim, kept spewing flame after flame, Ace acted at once. With a swish of his hands, a pale blue barrier snapped into place before him, blocking Bakishim's fire completely. The Ultra Barrier stopped every blast from advancing an inch. The eyes in the viewing room turned toward Zophy with renewed pressure. Why hadn't he activated his barrier? People wondered. Was his earlier performance staged? Zophy said he didn't know either. The fight continued. Bakishim, furious that its flames were useless, launched the horn on its head like a projectile. Ace dodged and fired a cutting ray that blasted the horn clean off. Then he gathered energy into his palms and sent out an ace spark that pinned Bakishim in place. So far, it had been a typical Ultra battle. Then, the footage showed something that left everyone stunned. Ace's mouth curled into an almost wicked smile. He shaped the metallium energy in his right hand into a serrated, that disc-shaped wheel of light and threw it. The Ultra Cutter screamed through the air and struck Bakishim's neck, slicing through without resistance. The head came off in a spray of gore, flew up, and landed hard. Bakishim's eyes remained wide with bewilderment, as if it hadn't realized what had happened. Its neck was a smooth, bloody cross-section. For a long, stunned moment, there was nothing but silence. Viewers froze, minds blank. The headless body twitched twice, then collapsed in a thud. The frame hung there, and slowly people returned to themselves, staring at the screen with wide eyes. Then the footage advanced. Bakishim's head and body had been laid together, neat and orderly. Good grief. Decapitation? Came the stunned commentary. You call this mercy? Have I been misunderstanding what mercy means? If this was the proper way Ultras fought, they thought, then maybe you take off wings, break missiles from noses, blast horns, or if the monster has a horn, blow it off or cut its head clean off. It was brutal. It was merciful. Back on the Land of Light, Ultraman Ace looked at the stunned crowd and scratched his head. What's wrong? Why isn't anyone speaking? Brother Ace, you are merciful, very merciful, Zeta said slowly. But do super beasts feel pain? Another asked. Of course not, Ace declared confidently, pointing at the screen. Look, Bakishim didn't even scream after I cut its head off, so it definitely didn't hurt. The other Ultra brothers winced inwardly. How can it scream when its head's gone? They muttered. Zeta, however, still had doubts. But what about the first Gamali King? I remember it screaming horribly. Oh, that one? Ace waved the question away carelessly. It always screams like that. You're overthinking it. Is that so? It is so. Zero, standing nearby, started to sweat. That tone sounded suspiciously unreliable. Uncle Ace, please don't make Zeta into you, he thought. Teaching that simpleton to fight like this would be a disaster. Zero felt tempted to leave. This disciple was going to be hard to educate. While many questioned Ace's mercy, not everyone did. In other worlds, viewers praised his methodical targeting of vital points. Hyperion's Himeko admired it. I like Ace's style of aiming for weak spots. It's efficient. Bronya nodded. It would make a good game mechanic. Across universes, opinions varied wildly. In the world of Attack on Titan, Captain Levi's eyes shone with approval. What's cutting the nape? Ace just chops off heads and necks. That's how it should be. Bring him here, and the Titans are finished. In the Tiga world, Shinjo and Hori were aghast. You call this mercy? Ace is too brutal. They were used to Tiga finishing monsters quickly with an explosive ray, not leaving them to suffer before the end. Only Daigo found himself oddly approving of Ace blowing off Bakushim's horn. The footage rolled on to the next battle, Moth Super Beast Doragori. A subtitle explained the setup. Ace had expended too much energy and been knocked down by Doragori. Tak launched the Maria II space ballistic missile to destroy the Demon Star Koala, letting sunlight reach Ace's ultra hole and restore his energy. Ace revived, enraged, and set his sights on Doragori. The newly revived Ace pounded Doragori into a daze, then grabbed its head and slammed it repeatedly into a mountain peak. Rock and debris fell as every impact echoed. Viewers watched in a mixture of horror and awe. This was brutal. No, merciful. Doragori's head was dented, its whole countenance misshapen, but Ace kept going. He picked it up, carried it into the sky, and hurled it down so hard the ground exploded. Doragori wailed, but Ace, firm in his belief that super beasts felt no pain, didn't stop. As Doragori staggered up, Ace struck its belly with a rushing punch. A cylindrical chunk of flesh was blasted out. A horrible, gaping hole opened in its abdomen. The sight made viewers suck in cold air. Doragori clutched at the wound, feeling the cold draft of its entrails. It flailed, its screams raw and endless. Ace roared, raised his right hand to the sky, and with a flash, a long blade of light materialized, the Ace Blade, formed from psychokinesis and pure light. He performed a single, lightning-fast flourish. The audience barely saw the motion, only the dazed Doragori take 2 staggering steps, and then, mid-turn, its head came off. The room recoiled. A cold chill ran down spines. Did Ace always aim for the enemy's neck? If he heard them, he would say earnestly, "You've guessed only half right. The good news is, I don't only target necks. The bad news is, I don't only target necks." What the viewers didn't know was that the coming footage would show Ace moving beyond decapitation. He was about to add dismemberment to his repertoire. 36. Stop decapitating, dismember. The same montage kept playing. The screen rewound and replayed the grisly highlights again and again. Shots of a Choju that had been decapitated, a heart ripped out, flashes of Ace standing amid the carnage until it froze on one particular battle. Ace was up against 2 foes at once, Metron Seijin, Alien Metron, and the Choju Dragolri. Ace's tactics were clever. He knew fighting 2 enemies head-on was a bad idea, so he used grappling, threw one opponent down, then took on the other, keeping a steady rhythm and avoiding a disadvantage. But then Metron raised both hands and unleashed a blinding flash. For a moment, Ace's vision was gone, and he was immediately at risk, attacked from both front and back, thrown off balance. The audience leaned forward, hearts in their mouths. Then a shriek cut through the tension. Another monster lunged onto the scene, the giant fish monster, Maruchi. Maruchi attacked Ace too. For a time, the alien, the Choju, and the fish surrounded him and battered him like a football. Everyone watching held their breath. Even though they knew Ace usually won, this was ugly. Then the momentum shifted. When the fish monster crashed into Ace, he leaped aside, and Maruchi slammed into Dragolri behind him. The 2 monsters immediately turned on each other. The crowd hoped Ace would seize the chance and finish the fight. Instead, Dragolri grabbed the fish monster, ripped its belly from mouth to tail, exposing its bloody entrails, then tore off a thigh, killing it instantly. "Good grief, hand-torn sashimi," someone muttered. "A worthy opponent. This Choju likes to dismember." No wonder it met Ace. Ace's crisis still wasn't over. He'd expended most of his energy and stamina and was taking heavy punishment from both Dragolri and Metron. His color timer flashed a frantic red. The montage sped up. The background went black, the evil star blotting the sun, and Ace could only use half his usual strength. Thanks to Tak's diversion, he found an opening. He fired a paralyzing beam that froze Metron solid. Then Ace clasped his hands before his chest, his whole body trembling as if gathering power. Was he charging up for a decapitation? Viewers speculated wildly. "Ha!" Ace roared and swung, one hand up, one down, unleashing a giant crescent of light. The vertical guillotine cleaved through the paralyzed Metron Seijin, bisecting it completely. Organs and tissue rained down like a hideous shower of candies. What on earth? Vertical guillotine, and it splits them in half? Metron Seijin has so many rainbow candies in its belly. This is worse than decapitation. This is full-on dismemberment. If you see Ace, monsters, just run. Countless viewers reached the wrong conclusion. Ace wasn't a decapitation fanatic. He was a dismemberment maniac. Daigo was stunned. He thought his own eccentricities were rare, but he hadn't expected to find an Ultra who treated combat like artisanal butchery. Cosmos couldn't resist. Then who am I? The montage didn't stop there. Next up, Killer Choju Baraba. Yapul had lured the Ultra 5 brothers to planet Gogoda and used the opportunity to send Baraba against Earth. Fans hoped for a team battle, but the narration made it clear. To foil Yapul's plot, the Ultra 4 transferred all their remaining energy to Ace so he could return to Earth alone and stop Baraba. On screen, Ace and Baraba were already locked in combat. Ace backhanded the flying sword protruding from Baraba's helmet, embedding it into Baraba's chest, straight into the heart. Baraba, bloodied and trembling, turned and fled in agony. Ace leaped, pounced, and struck with both hands. Baraba's eyes bulged, literally protruding like a snail's, and it writhed on the ground. Ace didn't stop. He ripped off Baraba's scythe-shaped left arm and flung it skyward, then caught the scythe, assumed a striking pose, and slashed. Baraba's head rolled free. Its body convulsed in the last throes of pain, its bulging eyes dimmed. To die like this, after all I've suffered, free at last, the dead creature seemed to gasp in the audience's imagination. You killed me with my own weapon. How brutal. The viewers swallowed hard. Baraba's agony was on full display. Ace was undeniably merciless. The montage continued, one gory sequence after another. Ace used an ultra disc cutter to split the transforming Choju Broken into 4 pieces. An ultra hand slice decapitated the rhino Choju Zygorg. Multiple vertical guillotines cleaved Unitang into 8 pieces before Ace finished it with dissolving fluid. Chopping, decapitation, dismemberment, horizontal cuts, vertical cuts, cross cuts, brazing, steaming, even water torture. The screen showed every imaginable method. These didn't look like standard Ultraman moves, but Ace used them all with uncanny calm. The younger Ultra Warriors from the Land of Light watched with a mix of horror and awe. This dismemberment maniac is terrifying, someone whispered. The strangest thing was Ace's own explanation. When accused of cruelty, he had shrugged and said, "Choju have no pain sensation?" I think Choju have no pain sensation. Whether they feel pain or not, what does it matter to me? As long as the blade is sharp, any pretense of pain is irrelevant. Seeing the young Ultra's horrified looks, Ace backpedaled. I'm not a perverted dismemberment maniac. You don't understand, Choju. Without these attacks, they wouldn't be stopped. I'm benevolent. Hey, youngster, why are you running? The young group answered in unison, Please don't explain, sir. We understand. Just don't come any closer. A rash of nicknames spread quietly among the viewers. Director of the Land of Light meat processing plant, dismemberment maniac, Choju cutting expert. The montage finally ended. A line of text scrolled up the screen. Underage aliens and monsters. Please watch with an adult. People wondered aloud why Choju sightings were so rare now. What species had Ace actually killed? Just as the audience thought the compilation was over, the screen flicked back on. This time, the image shocked every Ultra in the Land of Light. A young Ultra warrior appeared in the footage, wearing conspicuous Z-shaped armor across his chest and carrying an awkward, somehow clumsy air. Ace, Zero, Taiga, all the Space Garrison Ultras tilted their heads. That figure looked like Zeta. Zeta. Meow, meow, meow? 37. Recycling theme, Zeta. Is that Zeta? His face and the Z mark are the same, but why does this Zeta look so handsome? Yeah, that head crest, that armor. The footage showed Zeta struck by a terrible blow, a nearby skyscraper collapsing as he crashed into it, struggling to rise. But what shocked the Ultras most wasn't the damage, it was his appearance. The Zeta on the screen looked impossibly handsome, an entirely new form none of them had ever seen. Ultraman Zeta, Delta Claw, the footage labeled him. Zero rubbed his chin. Why is Zeta in Ace's compilation video? And the background looks like Earth, right? When has Zeta ever fought on Earth? Did Ace take him there? No, that can't be. Zeta's the biggest underachiever in the Space Garrison. He's only training in the grounds. How would he have gone to Earth? Ace, listening to the Ultras, frowned. Zeta was indeed famed across the Land of Light as a hopeless cadet. He'd barely begun training. How could he possibly be on Earth? I know, Zoffy clapped suddenly. Remember the duel I had with Belial in the snowy mountains before? Ace's eyes widened. Zoffy means this is another scene from the future? The Ultras buzzed with astonishment. What startled them wasn't that the tape included future events. It was that this awkward kid, Zeta, would later train on Earth at all. He was the poster child for failure. They stared at the screen. In the footage, a titanic force struck Zeta, flinging him into a building. He reverted to his true size and struggled to stand. His chest-color timer flashed frantic red. He was badly wounded and nearly out of energy. The camera pulled back. Another figure filled the frame, a familiar old enemy, Baraba the Super Beast. Ace's fist tightened. He had fought Baraba and its master Yapul long ago. They were supposed to be gone. Yet here, Baraba stood, stronger than before. A voice unseen chuckled. I hit a powerful brawler king inside Baraba. Baraba roared, a scream full of hate. A flying blade on its head streaked toward Zeta like a white comet. The blade dropped, aimed straight for Zeta's heart. The Ultras tensed. Surely Zeta wasn't going to die here, was he? Then everything slowed. In the silent footage, a purple, cross-shaped blade of light appeared out of nowhere and struck Baraba's flying sword aside, just before it could pierce Zeta. It was the circular guillotine. The blade had arrived before the wielder did. Don't give up, Zeta, a majestic voice echoed from the horizon. Both Zeta and Baraba froze and turned skyward. A cross of white light flashed across the heavens, and a red globe of light spun and dropped into place between them. As classic Showa-era fanfare swelled, a familiar figure stood tall in the dazzling glow. Zeta felt strength surge through him. He pushed himself up, eyes bright with surprise. Ace, brother. When Ace appeared, the tension in the viewing room evaporated and was replaced by explosive excitement. Ace, the dismembering maniac, director of the meat processing plant, had come to the rescue. Ace, brother. This is really a future video. Zeta actually went to Earth. The Land of Light erupted. Many knew the ties between Zeta and Ace. Zoffy had found Ace and guided him. Ace had found and taken Zeta under his wing. From Zoffy to Ace, from Ace to Zeta, Z to A to Z, a lineage of Ultra heroes. In the footage, Ace explained his arrival. The Ultra metals guided me to this Earth, he said. Ultra metals? The Ultras blinked. Hikari, present and stunned, paled. The Ultra metals were devices he'd only just developed. He hadn't expected them to be used like this, or to be used by clumsy Zeta. Baraba, already seething with resentment and fed by Yapul's wrath from another dimension, locked onto Ace. It no longer saw Zeta. Ace! Ace, die for me! It howled, slinging its mace-hook arm at Ace's chest. Ace didn't dodge. He caught the flying hook on his forearm, deflecting it, then brought his hands to his headlight and bellowed. Laser beam! A sizzling, blinding torrent of high-temperature current surged toward Baraba. The monster slammed up its left-hand scythe to block. The scythe glowed red-hot under the onslaught. Two figures traded attacks like an opening salute, and the crowd braced for a battle to shake worlds. Would Ace beheading, dismembering, or quartering this creature? Then Ace stepped directly in front of Zeta and said, with the solemnity that would follow him forever, any creature under attack will feel pain, fear, or show a weakness. But Choju don't feel such things. On-screen, Baraba shrieked and gestured angrily, as if to say, what a load of nonsense. The audience burst into laughter. The moment was the origin of Ace's infamous line, and everyone watching recognized it. Here comes the performance of Ace, director of the Land of Light meat processing plant. After years of research, Ace discovered that if you kill a Choju, it won't cry out in pain. Ha ha. Yapul, any creature, when attacking, will feel compassion or stop, but Ace will not. Ha! Even those who loved Ace found the claim absurd. After watching how Baraba met its end, the viewers muttered in sympathy for the beast. Do Choju really feel no pain? Of course not. Ace's line was nonsense. And then the tape skipped. What the? The audience was about to complain, but the footage jumped to the end. Zeta, in his beta smash form, clutched a 7-colored orb of light that pulsed with palpable power. Cosmic Zeta Beam, he roared. The orb smashed into Baraba like a comet. Bound by Ace's stop ring, the monster began to disintegrate. Skin burned and sloughed away, limbs fragmented, eyes protruded. Even if Yapul dies, Choju will not die. Baraba bellowed its last, then exploded into dust. Only its left scythe remained, plummeting earthward and embedding in the ground. Its fall, combined with the fading beam of light, left an A carved on the battlefield. Ace didn't catch the scythe. The battle was over. The audience groaned and cheered in a strange mixture. Oh! Muscles, muscles! Titus the Sage, looking at Zeta's beta smash form, a muscular display if there ever was one, trotted to Zeta and inspected him with gleeful energy. Zeta-san has this form too? Let me see. Zeta squirmed under the scrutiny and waved a hand. Oh, Titus bro, no, I don't have this form now. The footage wrapped with a caption. Compilation Video 4. Ace, Director of the Land of Light Meat Processing Plant, Dismembering Maniac, Saw Man of Light, ends here. Ace stared at the screen. Why had his title changed? Wasn't he Ace of the Ultra Brothers, the Showa Dharma King? Saw Man of Light, he muttered. Watching the youngsters below laugh about dismembering Choju, he bit his lip, wanting to shout, Choju really don't feel pain. Not a single one cried out when I used the guillotine. 38. Trait number 1 of a loser. Teamwork. Me in the future. I actually went to Earth for training, and I fought side by side with Senior Ace. Space Garrison. From the moment Zeta appeared, he was practically vibrating with excitement. He spun around and grabbed Zero by the shoulder, shaking him like a caffeine-fueled kid. Master, did you see that? I went to Earth in the future. I've got new gear and new forms. I even fought with Senior Ace. Tell me, Master, will you fight with me in the future too? I really want to know who my human host is, what they're like, what job they have. At that time, I must be a full Space Garrison member, maybe even famous, a great name in the Land of Light. Shut up, you little... Zero cut Zeta off with an ultra slap, stopping the non-stop chatter. His face was impatient, but the corners of his mouth betrayed him and twitched upward. He was genuinely happy for his foolish apprentice. This Zeta kid wasn't bad. Huh, hope values rising that fast? In the Annihilation dimension, Liu Bei, who had been about to upload an Easter egg chapter, halted. He noticed the hope value of one world spiking. The target of that hope was the dismemberment maniac Ace, and the world was one he knew very well, the Attack on Titan world. No wonder the reaction to other Ultramen wasn't that big, but as soon as Ace showed up, the hope value shot up. Dismembering a Choju, super beast, was one thing. Cutting apart a Titan would be something else entirely. Still, even with the surge, the hope value hadn't reached 100%. Liu Bei didn't meet the conditions for descent. Let's drop the Easter egg chapter first, he chuckled. Senior Ace, prepare for social death. Across countless worlds, audiences were already buzzing about Ace. Keywords like Director of the Land of Light Meat Processing Plant and Choju have no pain were stuck in everyone's heads. Other Ultramen from other universes were taking notes. After watching compilation videos, they had to admit Ace's footage was inspiring. Daigo became even more convinced that his method of breaking horns was the right approach, attack monsters physically and psychologically. Then a voice echoed from the stream, now playing Ace's compilation video, Easter egg Chapter 1. Unity. Unity? When that positive word appeared on screen, the first thing most viewers thought of wasn't solidarity, but infighting. Ace's main compilation had promised benevolence, but shown the exact opposite, brutality when dealing with Choju. Still, doubts lingered. Ultramen tended to be very brotherly in previous videos, master and apprentice, brothers, comrades. There was no sign of infighting among most Ultraman, except for Belial and Zaffi, and that had a complicated backstory. Most importantly, Belial had already defected from the Land of Light, hardly a representative Ultra anymore. So when Unity flashed, Father of Ultra, Mother of Ultra, and the Ultra Brothers all looked at one another, unsure whether the video was sincere or ironic. Talking about civilization, then immediately shouting, Babelian you, compiling benevolence only to reveal a dismemberment maniac. Was this a joke? Ace calmed down from his earlier excitement and frowned. I didn't do anything for disunity, did I? Could this Easter egg be about someone else, like Leo? Taro scratched his head. Our fight earlier shouldn't count, right? Wait, what do you mean our? That wasn't me at all. It shouldn't count. After all, it's been compiled, someone said. The Ultra Brothers searched their memories anxiously. Their brotherhood was famous not only for power and rank, but for being the perfect embodiment of the Ultra spirit. The idea they had a dark, disunited secret seemed impossible. In the little Goldman universe, White Belial sneered at unity. A joke, he thought. He believed only in strength. Unity and comrades were illusions. Even so, he admitted that Ultramen had been united once. He'd had friends before his defection. If the compilation was actually praising the Land of Light, Belial didn't believe it. Still, curiosity gnawed at him. Whose dark past would be exposed this time? Time crawled as viewers speculated about who the next Easter egg chapter would feature and whether Unity was sincere or sarcastic. Oh, speaking of Unity, I remember the loose ends from the Leo and Ace chapters haven't been tied up yet. That's right, the Ultra Brothers appeared in the Leo chapter, and in the Ace chapter, Baraba mentioned the Ultra Brothers gave all their energy to Ace, but that wasn't explained. Maybe it's a flashback. I want to know what Belial did. Those unresolved threads made everyone itch with anticipation. It was like bugs under the skin. People wanted Liu Bei to hurry. Finally, the screen changed. Lines of text rolled out. Now playing Ace, Easter Egg Chapter 1. Brothers, the situation is urgent. Let's kill the traitor Astra. Silence hit the Land of Light like lightning. All audiences in other worlds. Meow, meow, meow. Astra? How does this connect this to the Leo chapter? Ace's face froze. He'd been so busy watching himself carve up Choju that he'd missed the line. Crap, I totally forgot that line. Leo blinked. Astra, who am I? How did I become a traitor? What the hell? Ace, brothers, the situation is urgent. Let's kill the traitor Astra. Countless viewers leaned forward, waiting to see how the famed unity of the Ultra Warriors would play out. Ace's roar filled the sky. Astra? Isn't he Leo's brother? Isn't he one of the Ultra Brothers? Why was Ace calling him a traitor and ordering him killed? This was unity taken to an extreme. Not only did Ace want to do it himself, he was calling the brothers to join him. No wonder the Leo brothers and the Ultras had once fought to the death and Leo had been knocked out by a combined beam. Ace had started it. People remembered that review video of Leo and grew even more curious. They all stared at the screen, desperate to know what that bastard Babar had done while impersonating Astra. Leo's expression on screen was suddenly different too. No wonder the Ultra Brothers had ganged up on Babar when they saw him. Poor Leo had tried to break up the fight and ended up badly beaten, taking a combined ray that nearly flipped him over. It turned out Ace had provoked it. His temper wasn't just for fighting super beasts. Little Goldman universe. White Belial laughed cheerfully, more delighted than when he'd seen Zoffy lose to him 3 times. This Ace, he purred. He's the Ultra Warrior I always imagined. Kill, kill, kill at the slightest provocation. Delightful. Belial thought the kid had promise. Ultra Spirit? That should have been thrown away ages ago. Killing is the way of a king. Ace ought to be captain of the space garrison, the big brother of the Ultra Brothers. In his mind, he maliciously beat up the father of Ultra and Zoffy again. Ultras from other worlds had expected the message of unity to be something like Zoffy's stoicism or Hikari's humility, an unusual, thoughtful kind of solidarity. They had never imagined an Ultra barking orders to kill his own. Whatever Babar did, it must be serious to make Ace so murderous, many guessed. Some felt sorry for Astra being blamed. Others found Ace's bluntness oddly funny. Tiga's world, Shinjo and Hori suppressed their laughter while feeling bad for Astra. Daigo looked surprised and puzzled. Even if Astra had been impersonated by some alien scoundrel, Ace shouldn't just call for his death. If it was a mistake, the consequences would be terrible. Is this unity? Daigo scribbled Ace's fiery temper into his little notebook. If he ever visited the Land of Light, he'd have to be careful not to anger him. Still, he couldn't help being curious. What had the fake Astra done to provoke such a response? Across many worlds, viewers shared the same question. The video continued. The first shot showed a planet far larger than Earth, a glitter of advanced vehicles and buildings, recognizable to some as the ancient Ultra Star, an early version of the Land of Light. Then the camera cut to space. An iron chain uncoiled from nebular dust like a greedy snake and shot toward the surface. It swam not slowly, but with terrifying speed. In a blink, it wrapped itself around a burning spire, the Ultra Torch Tower. The chain rattled, as if something tugged at the other end. The torch swayed, on the verge of collapse. The view cut again. A high-tech automatic door slammed open with a hiss, and to stirring, heroic music, a familiar figure poked his head out. Flamehead Captain, someone shouted from within the Land of Light. Zoffy peeked out and hurried forward. The original Ultraman and Jack emerged right behind him. Ace surged so hard he nearly lifted the door off its hinges. The camera landed on close-ups of each of the 4 Ultramen in turn, lingering on their faces. The sequence was meant to be dramatic, but with the music and their simultaneous, earnest movements, it came off oddly comical. Viewers couldn't help laughing. "They don't look very bright," came one remark. "Why are they coming out from underground like that?" Ace almost lifted the door. "Is Ace awake? Why isn't his headlamp on?" Someone joked that the 4 of them looked like Teletubbies. Others compared them to Diglett from a certain monster-catching show. The sight of them, round heads, round faces, round eyes, made the comparisons stick. Back on screen, the torch tower bound by the iron chain finally gave way with a thunderous crash. Rock and dust exploded into the sky. The blast's tremor sent the rushing Ultras sprawling to the ground, ultra-prone, 4 of them. In the flash of the explosion, they all popped their heads up at once. The original Ultraman blinked in confusion, Ace peered over from behind, and Zoffy and Jack craned their heads from either side. Their synchronized head pokes were so identical that viewers burst into uncontrollable laughter. For a while, many worlds were filled with amusement at the ridiculousness of it all. Note, the Ultra Torch Tower is not the Plasma Spark Tower. It's a landmark built to commemorate the victory in the Ultra Great War, when the Land of Light defeated Dark Emperor Belial. It stands for peace and victory, though in that ancient era it was also armed with lasers powerful enough to destroy stars, an old setting not to be judged by present standards. 40. The Traitor Astra. Ha ha ha! I can't stop laughing. Hurry, bring out the camera Hikari made. I want a picture. That 3-headed peak is priceless. I swear, every move the Ultra Brothers made back then was a joke. They're like walking meme factories. Was the Land of Light really so poorly landscaped in those days? And that door, what cheap workmanship. It almost collapsed when Ace smashed into it. On the plaza of the Land of Light, a group of young Ultra Warriors were laughing without restraint, some even snapping photos of the footage playing on a screen. The few older Ultra Brothers assigned to the security force watched in growing irritation, fists clenched, wishing they could fly down and administer an Ultra slap. Zoffy looked at Ace with something like stunned resignation. Of all the things to be remembered for, why did Ace drag the first generation and Jack into this? And why did everyone insist we looked like a bunch of gophers? Not my fault we look similar, he thought. Traitor Ace. In the clip, the first generation lay in the foreground, filling almost half the frame. He sat up and suddenly pointed off screen, alarmed. The flame of the Ultra Torch Tower. It's gone out! The camera cut to Zoffy, who, eyes wide, jabbed an accusatory finger toward the control room on the screen. Who? Who did it? Then to Jack, who clenched his fist and hissed, the ruler of the dark universe. Ace, standing behind him, nodded seriously and raised his fist. Babar has come. Zoffy slammed his palm against the plaza stones and leapt to his feet with dramatic flair. Catch him, Babar of the dark universe. He pointed, and the 3 brothers snapped into motion like sled dogs cast off their leads. The audience dissolved into laughter at the theatricality. Why are their voices and gestures so ridiculous? Is this really the same Zoffy who fought Belial in the Great War? They're in perfect sync. 4 brothers, 4 parts of a single line. Ha ha! The footage switched to a control room. A furtive figure slipped inside. At first, half the viewers squinted and guessed, "Isn't that Astra?" Then others protested, "No, it's Babar in disguise. The real Astra is probably frozen in a block of ice by now." But as the camera pushed closer, something metallic protruding between 2 rows of red-lit instruments came into focus. It was the Ultra Key, its lights flickering. A strange, comically jaunty tune played as the figure clutched the key and began tugging. Sparks and small arcs of electricity flared. With a final bright pop, the key was wrenched free. The control room hit with cascading failures. Alarms screamed, consoles sparked, viewers were dumbstruck. The Ultra Key, this planet's most critical device, the instrument that regulated the Ultra Star's orbit and could obliterate a world with a single blow, had just been stolen. Where were the guards? Where was Hikari? Someone yelled for Officer Hikari to come help, but the Land of Light's security systems had always been laughably lax. more like a villain's backyard than a fortress. Hikari's contraptions never had anti-theft catches to begin with. Once the initial outrage settled, the audience realized why the Ultrastar had nearly collided with Earth during the Leo arc, and why the brothers had chased Astra then. That son of a... Someone spat. Explosions and smoke from the control room spread across the feed. The Ultrastar itself reacted. Its orbit slipped. On the surface, the brothers watching in the clip noticed the change. Ace, theatrically forming a W with his hands, shouted, "Oh no!" The first generation bellowed, "The Ultra Key has been stolen." They lunged for the automatic door. As they reached it, the door opened from the inside, and, astonishingly, the Ultra Key seemed to extend out of the doorway. Astra leaped out, clutching it. He immediately took a fighting stance and charged at the first generation. The two collided, trading blows and kicks. For a moment, the first generation managed to seize the key and throw Astra aside. The crowd on the Land of Light applauded. Well fought, a true warrior with incomparable physicality. Then the scene turned inexplicable. As the first generation lunged, Astra wildly swung the key. The key didn't seem to connect, yet the first generation collapsed in a puff of dust, face full of sand as though struck. The audience squinted. This wasn't right. The key hadn't appeared to hit him. Was he faking? Caught in the confusion, Astra used the opening to fly straight out of the Land of Light, vanishing into the sky. Jack, Zophy, and Ace arrived moments later and helped the fallen first generation to his feet. The crowd began grumbling again. If the first generation had staged a fall, at least stand up on your own 2 feet. The first generation, voice hoarse and labored, insisted, "The Ultra Key has been stolen." Zophy's fists tightened. "That cunning Babar of the Dark Star!" He shouted, then the first generation cut him off, grinding his teeth. "No, Astra stole it. Astra, Leo's younger brother." A narration box filled the screen. "The flame of the Ultra Torch Tower has been extinguished. Someone seized the chance to steal the Ultra Key." The Ultrastar's orbit shifted, and the planet began to drift. On screen, the consequences were immediate. The altered orbit triggered cataclysms. Skies rained debris, the ground fractured, explosions ripped through the landscape. The Ultrastar's surface, already austere, was pocked and lashed by fire and dust. In the chaos, the drifting world swept past a red planet. The 4 brothers, Ace and the others, dropped into a synchronized prone position. Their timing was perfect, almost laughably so. They scanned the nearby planet through the corner of their eyes, peeking in unison, ultra-peeking 4, as if afraid of grazing their heads and recreating the humiliation of their comrade, Captain Flame. The audience roared with laughter again. Every move the 4 brothers made seemed to carry a comic undercurrent, so different from their grave battle personas. Perhaps that was the humanized charm of Ultra Warriors. The Ultrastar finally pulled clear of the red planet. The 4 brothers hesitated, then rose cautiously. Ace was first to stand, his anger flaring. He scooped up a handful of sand and, with mock ritual, sprinkled it from left to right like a cook seasoning a slab of meat, and let out a roar. "Brothers, the situation is urgent. Let's go kill the traitor Astra." Voices in the plaza chimed, half joking. "Iconic scene. Check in." In the distance, Astra muttered to himself, incredulous. "What the hell, Ace? Are you serious?" P.S. In the Showa era, the Ultra cosmology wasn't as fully developed as it is now, so the Ultrastar in those days looked rougher and less detailed than the Land of Light fans are familiar with today.